the way I break down competition is that, you sort of have mainstream social media, which is all existing in a certain paradigm of surveillance. Their code is all secret. Their algorithms are all secret. There's pretty bad censorship happening. They're really putting the users last as opposed to first. And so, I consider us, along with a couple of others, in the open source realm, in the decentralized realm, to be the top competitors. So in Web3, which is now emerging, you sort of have these networks that are community owned, users come first. And, so yeah, I definitely put us kind of at the lead of the pack in that realm. It's really sort of terrifying how little we know about why we get punished on these platforms. Not just Facebook, it's Twitter, it's YouTube, it's all of the big tech. They sort of operate in the same way. The algorithms are unknown. So, what's offensive is that, everybody puts so much energy into these platforms, and then they just don't care. They'll just betray you, even if you've spent the last 10 years giving them your energy. It's a totally unbalanced relationship dynamic, and they don't show any signs of changing any of that behavior. I mean, so I think it's just scary, and we just recommend, people back up their situation. You don't want to be over reliant on third parties that you can't control and who have such a history of betrayal. Web3 is about owning your identity and your content. That's like a portable system that you can go to you can sign into every different network, but you're carrying with you your identity, your social graph, your username, your NFTs are correlated to your crypto address. So the way that it works, so you have your public key, which is the address that people send stuff to you. And you have your private key, which is your, basically password that only you control. No other third party has access. So does that make sense? It's sort of reversing the dynamic. Like on Facebook, they control your identity. When you sign in with Facebook Connect to some other site, or you sign in with Google, if Google goes down, all the apps that are reliant on logging in with Facebook go down too. But in the crypto world, it doesn't go down. Web 1, Web 2, Web 3 are all natural evolutions of the internet. So Web 2 is basically big social media, Twitter, Google, Facebook, these huge centralized silos of data and infrastructure. So, you're logging in to their world, and there's all kinds of great things you can do on centralized servers. So it's not as if like Web 2 is just meaningless and completely going away. I think there's always going to be a balance between centralized infrastructure and decentralized infrastructure. It's a spectrum, and they need to be balanced, if anything. So, the idea that that we're going to the far extreme of just absolute decentralization, that's not even really how systems theory works. Unfortunately, free speech has been politicized over the last 5 years. The censorship, and the data shows this almost across the board, censorship causes more radicalization. It causes people to feel victimized and to become more polarized and extreme, and even resort to violence because of the censorship. If you just show humanity and compassion for people who may even hate you, that's actually the only way that they can change their minds. If you ban them, you're almost guaranteeing that they will never change their minds. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking. And I don't feel like it's really controversial. It's pretty obvious psychologically. You're never going to change if you don't have the ability to learn. And by shutting down communication, you're actually shutting down people's ability to learn. Joe's the man. I mean, he's such a balanced thinker and fair and just curious. That's really what it's all about. I mean, when you talk to people who aren't curious and are just pushing agendas, it's just like unbearable. It's so cool to watch these podcasts become the mainstream media. People are listening to multi-hour long form conversations as their primary source of information now, and that's a good thing because that has nuance, that has, you know, fun, that has comedy, that has silliness. I'm psyched that this new media is taking over the legacy media. They're just gonna, and it's very similar to what we're talking about with like Web3 and Web2. I think that there's almost like Media 2, Media 3 happening, and it has very similar principles.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. To stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast and Twitter at Catalyst_Action. Thanks for listening.